Okay, apologies if it's a little bit noisy. I'm not sure if it is. I can hear some people outside. I have to have the windows a little bit open because it's very warm. But there's a lot of activity today because it's Midsummer's Eve, which is a rather crazy tradition over here. People they go nuts. Anyway, but I have a couple of hours before I need to leave for my celebration, so I thought that I would film a video, which I haven't done in a little while. Um, I, I did film one a few months. It's been so long since the last upload, but time. I don't know. It's just been this way for a while now. I tend to struggle with keeping up with it, and then before I know it, months have passed by, and it's been months since I tried to do this the last time. And I guess I wasn't happy with the video, so I never uploaded it. I never even edited it. But let's hope that I have better luck this time. It's a bit dusty here. I don't think I can get this all off. But anyway, hope you can put up with it. Um, okay. I'm sure I can get this off. I should have done that before. Typical of me, like, I don't even plan anything. Okay. So I I do want to mention before I get started that, well, first of all, my tripod is broken in two places, so I hope this camera is gonna stay where it is. It might fall at some point. So there's number one. I also wanted to mention that this year has been a little bit challenging financially, when it comes to finding well, the opportunity to buy movies. So I haven't been able to do that very much, but as a collector over the years, I've of course bought things that I haven't seen, and so I've sort of looked at it as a kind of black cloud with a silver lining, or it's not really a black cloud. It's a privilege to be able to buy movies, and it's fine not being able to do that for a while. But it's a blessing in disguise, or whatever. But the silver lining though would be that I have so much that I've collected that I can now actually watch and hopefully get to that point where I am caught up, which is every collector's dream, right? So I'm sort of trying to do that. I've looked at this as a chance to watch all the things that I haven't been able to watch because I bought too much for being able to realistically be able to watch all of it. Anyway, so that's one thing. I mentioned that, I guess, because most of this stuff is not recently purchased, but it is recently watched. I'm just gonna get into it now. This is all kinds of stuff. No order, uh, no nothing. Just they're placed in the stacks here in the order that I saw them. So the most recent stuff is on top, but I might just switch that around as I please. But anyway, I wanted to start by showing this, the films of Jan Svankmajer. Been a fan of this director for a while, a Czech filmmaker. I think he was born in like maybe the late 30s. What's fun about this, I'm not sure if anyone is gonna remember this, but in 2016 I made a video, two videos actually, about his last film, which was going to be called Insect, which is right here. And I talked about donating for the Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign that they created in order to be able to make the film Insect. So this was in 2016 before they had made it, and I donated $150, I think. And my award was to get this box set once the film had been made, once the Blu-ray set had been made, and so that the film could be included in the Blu-ray set. So I made a video about this, or two, in 2016. One of them was called something like Blu-ray update December ... 2018 question mark, which at the time seemed like way into the future, which it was. I mean, it was 2.5 years at that point, because that was the like expected delivery date for this. It ended up arriving somewhat later than that, like early 2019, which means that I've had it for 2.5 years. And so so I talked about this set for the first time 5 years ago, which is hard to believe. But I was a fan of him then, and I still am. I was introduced to him through the BFI DVD set of his short films. I was a huge fan of many of those. And then eventually I watched a couple of his films, Conspirators of Pleasure and Lunacy being the only two that I had seen before this set, except for Insect, of course, which well, not of course, but I was able to receive a Vimeo link, I think, after that had been made and released before the box set came out. So I haven't actually put the disc of Insect in the player. But so I watched Conspirators of Pleasure again for the second time. Little Otik, Faust, and Alice for the first time, and Surviving Life just recently. But so why has it taken me so long to show this? I think I watched Alice or Little Otik like immediately when I received it. But then it just, it sits around, time passes, and before you know it, like once again, a couple of years have passed by, and I finally found the time or whatever for the last one, Surviving Life, which I saw a couple of weeks ago. It's a good box set. You can buy it on his official store. I did have a look. The only listing that I could find was buying this set, and then I think it was more expensive than what I paid. So it's like 190 euros or something like that, which is a lot of money, to be fair. But you also get a book, it seems. I'm not sure if you could buy the Blu-ray set without the book. I couldn't find any information about that, but I'm not sure that I would have paid 150 for this set on its own. I was just happy to donate a little bit and then get this as a reward. It seemed like a good deal at that time. But if you are interested, it is available, but again, it's quite pricey. But I'm happy to have this. It's a very nice set. I'm gonna continue on here talking about another very nice set, which was released as a limited edition a few years ago, and then that's out of print now. So they released this version, Walerian Borowczyk, or Boro. This is a box set. It's got The Beast, Immoral Tales, Blanche, Goto, The Isle of Love, Theater of Mr. and Mrs. Cabal, and a disc of short films. So I had seen The Beast and Blanche previously. The Beast I really liked, more than I thought I would. Blanche I was struggling with a bit. That's gonna have to get a rewatch somewhere down the line. Immoral Tales I really liked, and Go to Isle of Love as well. The short films are really interesting too, and there's so many extras on this in this set. Like they really went above and beyond with all the extras. They have tracked down people who worked with Borowczyk, and they have had them record commentaries for some of the short films, for example. So just that tells you that they seem to be passionate about this set. I also have. Oh no! Wait a minute! I fucked up. I said that I really liked Immoral Tales. That's actually a lie. I was sort of on the fence about it. I was thinking about a film that is not in this set, but it's released by Arrow. This is an Arrow set as well. Story of Sin. That one I really liked. And then also from Arrow they released, I forget the title. It's like Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Miss Osborne. I think that's it. Could be a little bit wrong. Again, that one I wasn't so crazy about. So they're a little bit hit or miss for me. The Beast is honestly still my favorite, but I really like Goto as well. Had a really interesting aesthetic and an interesting kind of cinematography. But those other Blu-rays, I could have brought them out, I guess. But yeah, I only wanted to talk about a few things today. Some of the things that I had available here. But so I have those other two on the shelf, and I wanted to mention them though because they are also very nice in terms of special features and so on. But his films, they're very hard to sort of classify. I mean, he started making short films before moving on to feature-length films, and a lot of the short films, they were animation, sort of surrealist animation, stop motion, He experimented quite a lot with different kinds of editing and animation. And then he moved on to feature-length films, and he would have quite a lot of erotic elements. So The Beast has that quite a bit, Immoral Tales as well. Blanche, I suppose, maybe not as much, but Goto, again, maybe not as much. But the other two that I mentioned, quite strongly erotic in many ways. And there's a short film, I'm not sure which one it is, but it might even be an extra somewhere here. But I'm not sure what disc it's on. But it's just a series of shots showing sculptures that have erotic details to them. So there might be a movement or a function, something that the sculpture does, but and it's always dirty. It seems like, from what I've understood, that Borowczyk himself made this stuff with his own two hands. So he was a sculptor and an artist in so many different ways. So he's a really fascinating filmmaker. I think it's pretty safe to say that he's been fairly overlooked, and I think that he really should be paid more closely attention to, because I thought most of this stuff was really interesting. The box set is phenomenal. I mean, it doesn't have the book, which the limited edition had, of course, which is usually the case. But just all of the Blu-rays are so amazing. Even if I don't love the films, they're always interesting in some way. So there's that. Oh, and I saw this film not too long ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Our Time, a film by Carlos Regadas, Mexican filmmaker. I've seen one more film from him called Silent Light, which they have differences and similarities. And then I won't get into exactly the differences and similarities, partly because it's a little bit out of my depth, but also I don't really feel like I have the time to go into it. But he does make very slow films a lot of the time. He lets the scenes sort of breathe, if you will, and he lets them take time and play out the way he wants them to play out. He's not gonna, have every scene, go on forever just because he wants to show off. But if he feels like it's appropriate for the scene, he will let it go on for some time. So this is a quite long film. I think Silent Light is more maybe a couple of hours, but this is about 3 hours, as you can see. Really like this one. This one I received for my birthday, Mr. Lonely. I wanted this. I didn't know that they had put this out on Blu-ray, but Harmony Korine film. I really love Gummo, Spring Breakers. Julian Donkey Boy is a good one too. Beach Bum was alright. This one was interesting. This one was very easy to watch compared to something like Julian Donkey Boy, which is so stylized and sort of broken down somehow. This one looks much more mainstream, if you will, but there's ideas that definitely challenge the viewer. Some really interesting, there's a story that comes in kind of throughout the film that has nothing to do with the main story of this film, but it's sort of a parable or some kind of, I don't know, something that works alongside the main story, and kind of up to you to decide what it means, how they belong together. But that parable or that side story was so interesting. The main story is good, but the way the film ended, I thought was just incredible. So I didn't know that this Blu-ray, I'm sure you can hear that. I have to be honest, I have to walk out there very soon, and I just dread having to say hello to my neighbors. Such a silly thing. Yeah, so this has been released on DVD in the UK. I believe that has a couple of extras. I didn't know about this Blu-ray, the Swedish Blu-ray, until shortly before my birthday, and so I thought, well, that's perfect, I'm gonna ask for this one. So, well, I was happy to see that. And now the only feature-length film, I think, from Harmony Korine that I haven't seen is a film called Trash Humpers, which I have no idea what to expect from, but I'll see it eventually. There are DVDs of it out there. Anyway, let's see what I have. Okay, this one I saw yesterday. Mysterious Object at noon, Apichatpong Verasetakul. I've always had to say his name talking about his films. I don't know if I'm saying it right. This is a film that he made early on in late 90s. Thai filmmaker. Always thought his films were very interesting. This one is no exception, but it's an interesting kind of cinema verite experimental film. It essentially asks people of this certain region in Thailand to come up with a story, and then they film the story, and then they move on to somebody else, and they ask this other person to continue the story. And so you get somebody who's, I don't know, maybe 60, then you get, later on, you get a child continuing the story. And so you can imagine that the directions of the story, they go in various directions, of course. And when you do an experiment like this, and it doesn't only, I thought that the film was just going to be like a series of interviews with people telling a story. There's many more layers than that, and it explores not just the made-up stories that the people come up with, but also their own stories. And so it juxtaposes these ideas in a way that is fairly seamless, but also some of it is a bit messy. And I don't know if I thought that, I mean, it's a nice idea to have these people come up with the story. It's like anyone, and I think it's remarkable in many ways that Apichatpong, he, for his first feature-length film, he essentially let other people tell the story, which I think is a pretty cool thing. But of course he's telling his own story as well alongside. But yeah, so when you do this, and when you get this thing that just goes all over the place, a story that comes from so many different directions, it ends up being a pretty chaotic story. And it wasn't really, the story itself just fizzled out into surreal absurdism, and it just wasn't really that fun to follow the story itself anymore. But it is an interesting idea, and I think it works for the most part. Let's see what I have. Actually I have two films by Robert Altman. So first of all, Images. Both of these, by the way, I thought were really great. Yeah, this is a creepy, kind of claustrophobic film. You kind of feel exhausted as a viewer watching it, but then the ending is really incredible. This one is a little bit less exhausting, but it's equally nuanced, if not more. Altman, he said about this, he imagined like one of those hard-boiled, whatever, film noir detectives of the 40s or 50s, going into a coma and then waking up in the late 60s or early 70s in the hippie America, whatever. And the clashing between these two worlds. I didn't necessarily think about that when I watched it. I mean, I only found out about that's what he was thinking after having seen the film. But it puts, definitely shines some light on a few things. But it also seems like Elliot Gould, who's playing this character, it's as if he is playing a parody of a guy like that. At the same time, while he's actually playing a guy like that. Anyway, yeah, the ending is incredible to this one as well. There's a moment that is just, it's so visceral, and I won't say anything about it. But yeah, I'm not gonna say anything else. I don't really want to risk spoiling anything, but yeah, that moment in the end was pretty cool, I have to say. Okay, here's a really beautiful looking release. All of these are the 101 limited editions. This is Phase 4. And it also includes the Saul Bass short films, who, by the way, was a title sequence designer, which there's some a documentary on the disc talking about that, which I had no idea about beforehand. But yeah, Phase 4 is an interesting kind of mix between 2001: A Space Odyssey and kind of more schlocky, natural horror kind of thing. Maybe, I don't know if schlocky is the word. Well, anyway, I liked it, but I have to admit, there's a short film on the bonus disc called Quest. It's really just fluff. It's so easy to watch, whereas Phase 4 is more complex. But I can't lie, man, I really liked Quest a little bit better than Phase 4. it was just so much fun. So if you have this, and you don't have to have the limited edition to get the short films, I'm pretty sure it's all included in the standard edition. I guess what you don't get is the box and the booklet, you know. So if you do get this, don't stop at phase 4. You might not like Quest as much as I did, but I would recommend checking it out. It's very visually interesting. The other ones I didn't like so much. The rest of the short films. One of them may have been okay at best, but I didn't really like them. So it may be one of those Blu-rays that I will sell at some point, I have to say. But I like it. I enjoyed going through it for the most part. Okay, so here's a film called Miracle Mile. This is a really fun movie. Oh yeah, I reviewed this on Letterboxd, and afterwards I was like, I really want to take that down because I don't like the way that sounds. But it was such a long review or write up, and I don't want to waste all that time. But anyway, really fun movie, and the extras are really great as well. It's pretty clear that the director behind the film, I forget his name, Steve DeJarnett. He is very passionate about this film, and that becomes clear in the extras. And he seems to be very involved in stuff like that as well. Very conscious about home, video releases and wanting to make those really good as well, which is always really nice when people give a shit about the Blu-ray release. What else do I have? Well, I have this. I have had this for some time. I mean, I can always check Amazon when I bought these things. I think this might have been 2019 maybe. This is a Clint Eastwood 8-movie collection. It's a nice box. It has the films that you can see here. I think some of these, or I know some of these have been released in the US fairly recently. Maybe by Kino, maybe by Shout Select, I don't actually know. With some extras and stuff. None of these Blu-rays have extras. I don't think any of them do. Which is unfortunate. But I could upgrade to the American Blu-rays at some point, I guess. But I don't know if that's gonna happen. But I do like, become more fond of Clint Eastwood as a filmmaker just in the last couple of years, actually. I don't know exactly why, but I'm not complaining. I'm having fun with them. Out of these, I had never seen any of these before. The Beguiled, unsurprisingly turned out to be my favorite. Coogan's Bluff, so-so. Eiger Sanction, honestly kind of boring. Two Mules for Sister Sarah, really fun. Shirley MacLaine is in this. I really think she's good in most of the things she does. I just saw her in Sweet Charity as well, which is another one that I could have brought out, but again, there's too many that I could have brought out. And she was terrific in that also. Sweet Charity is not typically the kind of film that I would watch, but I enjoyed it. So anyway, I like seeing her in films, and she's really good in this. I really like the character she plays. Spoilers, no spoilers. High Plains Drifter. This was pretty grim, actually. I wasn't expecting it to be that grim. It says 18, and it's the only one that says 18. Even Beguiled doesn't, but yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure if I paid attention to that. Breezy. I had no expectations about this one, but he directed this one early in his career, and it was like the third or the second film he made, and it's a complete departure from what he had done up until that point, and what he would do for a long. I mean, he's always done drama films mixed in with the action western, but this is a really good drama film. I mean, some people might not get along with it, but there was something about the that early 70s charm and the way things look. I thought the way it was shot and edited and the whole sound design, just really immersive and really nicely acted. The ending is a little bit saccharine, but I like Breezy. Play Misty for me was the big surprise here. I did not like it. I really didn't like it. It seemed so one-dimensional. that the female character, I don't know who plays her, Jessica Walter, was it? I mean, I remember her, but I don't know her name. Anyway, yeah, I didn't like that character. It seemed like there was no real redemption for that character. It just seemed, I don't know. I didn't like it. I mean, it works if it's like a Michael Myers, or Freddy Krueger, but if it's a, I don't know. It didn't really seem all that tasteful. Joe Kidd, I put this in. It doesn't. Why does it matter? But anyway, this was here before. Joe Kidd. Oh yeah, Joe Kidd was really fun. Like, it's not I don't know if it's a great, even a good movie. But it kind of was to me, though. I really I had fun with Joe Kidd. There was a lot of fun scenes in it. The story is very kind of simple, but yeah. So there's a couple stacks, and I think I can continue for a little while. Actually, I just gotta check the time. Okay, I have enough time. Okay, so we have a few here that I don't have as much to say about. A Snake of June, Tsukamoto. This one, I don't know what to say about this one. This one was pretty good. I liked it for the most part. There were a few things that I didn't really understand about. There's a couple of scenes towards the end that are interesting. The main story is pretty stylized. It's also pretty typical the way it's told. I didn't know if I thought that he did it in a unique way or not. I couldn't make up my mind. But ultimately, I did like it. I would watch it again. Grateful Dead. I don't know what the director is. Maybe it's on the cover, but I'm looking away. Let's see if I can think of it. Oh, A.G. Ushida. It's not on the cover. I think I fucked it up, though. A.G. No, I didn't. Well, I probably mispronounced it, but A.G. Ushida. Okay. Yeah, this one... again, I had fun with it. There were a few laughs, and I thought that the main actor was very good. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really know what to say about this one. Here is one from Second Run, The Shop on the High Street. Part of the Czech New Wave, or is it? Apparently, there's some debate going on whether it should be, because the directors, they weren't technically a part of that generation of like Milos Forman and Ivan Passer, Jan Nemes. I think they were maybe from a slightly earlier generation, and maybe some different experiences, which I don't know enough about the Czech New Wave to really know, but apparently that is the case. Yeah, this deals with the Holocaust in a way that to some people apparently was satirical and comical. To me, I mean, the comedy seemed to be sort of, maybe I looked at it the wrong way, but it didn't strike me as satirical, but maybe it was. It came off as maybe just more the necessity of something lighthearted in the midst of the horror that was to come, and it's yes. Did I say what it was about? Small town Slovakia, 1942. Nazi concentration camp deportations have begun, and then it's about this guy who, let's see if I can remember the details. His brother-in-law, was it, or his actual brother? He's like a Nazi officer, and so he comes along to the village. And he gives the main character, who's playing this sort of cowardly guy in a way, he tells him to, he appoints him as the Aryan controller, or the Aryan whatever they would call it, of a Jewish store owned by an old woman that he is to take over. And obviously we know what is going to happen to the Jewish woman, or what we think is going to happen to her. And then they form a relationship, and it's a very sweet film. Uh, Actually, it might be an odd word to use, but it is a sweet film, I thought. Um, yeah, I'd recommend it for sure. It's fairly challenging in some ways. It's really remarkable in the way that it's shot and in the way that it presents this village and the situation that they're in. There are a few things towards the end that seemed unplausible to me, and I don't know if I should go into details because again I don't want to spoil things. But what would I know about that, of course? But still, as just as a viewer watching the film, there were a few situations towards the end that I was kind of I couldn't help myself thinking about whether or not this was realistic. But anyway, yeah. Oh, here's a film by Derek Jarman. I went through this box set yesterday, or maybe I saw the film a couple days ago. I don't know, but I went through a lot of the extras yesterday. I had never seen anything by Derek Jarman. I've been kicking myself recently that I never picked up those BFI sets because they look phenomenal. At least one is out of. I think maybe the second one was in print last I checked, but the first one wasn't. So I was like, not very motivated to buy the second one if I didn't know that I could ever get the first one. And I really wish that I would have been interested in them when they were in print, but I just wasn't at the time. Now I bought The Garden along with his last film, or his was it his last film? I think so. Called Blue, which I've heard a lot about over the years. I remember at one point I was very skeptical about the film Blue, which was completely unfounded. But I haven't seen that one yet, but this one I saw recently, so I really look forward to watching Blue, partly because the film looks really great, but also partly because this Blu-ray set was really great, although I did not like most of it. What I mean is that the film The Garden, to me, was very visually grating and ugly. Some of the ideas were maybe a bit obvious, maybe. I don't know, man. I liked some of it, but at the end of it, I didn't have a positive experience with it. But what I mean when I say that I liked the Blu-ray, even though most of the short films I didn't like very much, it's such a well presented set. And I read some review on Letterboxd about one of the special features, somebody who was just dissing it completely, like, why would you include this on a Blu-ray set? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you? Isn't that a great thing for them to dig out all these things and preserve them in a package on a Blu-ray? And they've gone through a lot of trouble, it would seem to me, to put all this together, because they have the film The Garden. At the time, Derek Jarman, he was sick with AIDS. I think maybe he found out that he had that diagnosis maybe while making this film. So he was gay. He was part of the whole yes, what would I call it? The civil movement of the 80s, 70s and 80s, about gay rights, and that has a strong presence on the Blu-ray. It's pretty. I mean, I didn't know these things prior to watching The Garden. Started to think maybe some of these things were the case as I watched it, because some of the plot details would maybe suggest as such. But it became more obvious watching the shorts, because, well, first of all, I started by watching the interviews. There's 3 or 4 interviews with people who worked with him. Then there are some short films made by these people, which is really great that they included that. And then there is a couple of, some behind the scenes or bonus footage. And there is sort of unrelated, well, it's not unrelated, but it just happens to include Derek Jarman, I think, Clause and Effect, detailing the gay community uniting against the now infamous Clause 28, which is, as I understand it, was essentially a law that would prohibit whatever word to use, the promotion or the teaching of homosexuality. And that's probably very inaccurate and at least very incomplete, but maybe you get the idea. And they were This was in the 80s, and they were sort of marching against this. And the film Cause and Effect brings that up, as well as Kiss 25 Goodbye. It says somewhere that it's the clause is called 25/28, and I still don't really understand what that means. If it started as 25 and then another version of it came in 28, I'm so out of my depth. But so both of those films bring that up in different ways. Cause and Effect in a much more direct way, and Kiss 25 Goodbye in a much more artistic way. So when I say that I don't like the films on their own, I learned so much going through this set, and I really enjoyed it. That's sometimes the case. I don't know. Judging the films on their own, yeah, I didn't really like any of them that much. But as a whole, as a presentation of a Blu-ray, I really thought that it was a very well put together Blu-ray that I'm really happy that I bought. And I'm looking forward to watching Blue. I feel like maybe I should have waited talking about them maybe at the same time. But I also think that they deserve more attention, so I'm gonna save that and come back to that in a future video, hopefully. So that's all the Blu-rays. Now I have a bunch of DVDs. A lot of them I think are very interesting, but just know that from now on, I don't know how long I'm gonna keep talking. It sort of depends on my phone, the storage on my phone and so on, and time. Anyway, I'll show a few more anyway. The Theo Angelopoulos collection, I'm not saying that right, volume 2. So there's 3 sets all together, including all of his films. He died a number of years ago. I believe he died fairly tragically in a car accident or something like that. But he was a Greek filmmaker. He worked in the 70s, 80s, 90s, especially 2000s as well. So volume 1 and 3, I don't really remember. I would assume that they were not available, but this one was. And this has been the case over the past year or two when I've been checking on these sets. They've been going in and out of stock. And they are available now. Well, volume 3 is. I'm very close to pulling the trigger on that, even though I don't really have the money. I would love to. I just don't want them to go away. I have the second one. I don't want volume 1 and volume 3 to go out of print by the time I can get to it. So I really hope that I will be able to buy those before they are unavailable. But I don't think you really need to buy them in order. Alexander the Great, Voyage to Stethera, The Beekeeper, Landscape in the Mist, Suspended Step of the Stork. Beekeeper was the one that stood out as the least interesting one to me. All the other ones were really interesting in many ways. Alexander the Great I saw most recently, just a few days ago, and I fucking loved it. It was such a cool film. Very long, it's like 3 hours 20. It didn't actually feel like it though. Some stuff I was a little bit confused about in terms of the story and where it was going, but started piecing things together towards the end, and the way the film ends is really extraordinary. Voyage to Stethera is, I would argue, the most emotional out of these, maybe with Landscape in the Mist as a close second. They're all good. The Beekeeper, I don't really know about that one. It's okay, it's decent, but the rest of them I would strongly recommend. The Suspended Step of the Stork, Alliteration Hell. It was maybe held back slightly on the emotional level, but what am I trying to say? It really, it's a film that really goes into the emotions of the characters. I was just struggling to connect with it a little bit, but there's some of the most extraordinary shots in either of these films, in Suspended Step of the Stork. I'm thinking of maybe 3 of them in particular, but yeah. Anyway, I'm a fan based on these films for sure. I'll try to get the other 2 sets as well. Let's see. Okay, so I it was my birthday recently, and so I asked for a region-free DVD player because I don't have one currently. I had a Blu-ray player region-free years ago that broke down. I've talked about this. Was just never a priority to replace it. So I've sold a lot of Region A Blu-rays. I've kept a few, but I've sold a lot of it, and I had some DVDs, Region 1 DVDs, that I couldn't watch either, so I asked for a very cheap Region 1 DVD player, which I received, and it's very easy to use. It's not the best player, so there's like this humming sound in the background. But it sort of took me back to the old days where I used to watch VHS tapes on my shitty, thick TV. And, I don't really mind it. I'm really happy that I was able to watch some of these films that I had. Well, this one I didn't have. I bought this one specific. I bought this one now that I knew that I could watch it, and it was very cheap. The Cruise. Timothy Speed Levitch is portrayed in this. He's a tour guide in New York City on the buses, whatever sightseeing buses, tourist buses. And he knows his stuff. He's incredibly wordsmithy, which apparently I'm not, because I don't think that's a word. But he is he's a wordsmith. He's a raconteur in some ways, although he mostly tells stories about maybe. Well, well, anyway, he tells a lot of stories about the city of New York. He has a lot of philosophical, grand ramblings about his ideas. He's one of those people. I would not be surprised. If somebody put the sort of genius stamp on him, I would be completely. I think Woody Allen said very critically or very sarcastically, everyone's a genius these days, suggesting that very few people are. I don't know. I agree with that, and I would. If somebody were to put the genius stamp on this guy, I would not argue, because he seems like the kind of person who would be. I don't know, he's just, he's like, he's just throwing words around in a way. It's like he's walking in this golden garden, and all the fruits are just hanging down from him to pick at ease. He always finds the most interesting words to use in any given situation, and that makes him really interesting to listen to. You can listen to what he says multiple times and kinda uncover what he's saying only after a few times. I don't know, it made the film, along with the way it's shot, really quite addictive in many ways. I heard that, I don't know if this is interesting in any way, but it's apparently one of Edward Norton's favorite films. As I'm saying that, I'm like, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? I don't really give a shit. But I heard through comments, hey, this is one of Edward Norton's. Okay, great, good to know. Anyway, sorry. So I just passed that on, that bit of useless information. This is a really interesting film. It's unfortunately bare bones, the DVD, but it was very cheap. I really liked it. I really liked it. Translation. Okay, I'm gonna show just a couple more. Here is Where the Green Ants Dream, filmed by Werner Herzog. This one I found years ago. It's Region 1, so I could never watch it. There's a gross little. I think this is just from a sticker. It looks worse than it is. It's a really interesting film. It starts so interestingly with the images that he's choosing, and then some of the juxtaposition that he always seems to want to throw sort of abstract, potentially meaningless but potentially profound juxtapositions in his films. And I get the idea that some of the time he doesn't know what it means. Actually, I think I'm using a very direct example as the basis of that, but because in the film Stroszek, in the ending, it's not really a spoiler, there's an ending with a chicken kind of dancing. And he said in the audio commentary that I know that is a metaphor for something very important, but I have no idea what it is. And it seems like a cop-out, maybe it would be for some directors, but it just seemed like, yeah, I totally buy it, you know, and I agreed somehow. And there's a couple of those little things in this one as well. Now the middle section, there's a kind of legal courtroom drama going on, which was honestly really boring. It's not really what I want out of a Herzog film, and I didn't like that part. But it needed to be there for the story. I understand that. Well, maybe it didn't really need to be there actually, but they decided to put it in there. There's a few comedic moments throughout that feel kind of. It didn't need to be there either. But again, some of these images in the beginning, the ending, they were really interesting. So I rewatched some of it, and I had a nice time with this. It was weird. I remember I just saw this about a week ago, and I had this feeling, this, like I said about the cruise, this throwback feeling to when I was watching VHS tapes on my TV, and I don't know what that was. Maybe I don't even need to mention that, but it was some weird. I tapped into some kind of weird nostalgia that I haven't felt in years. So I don't know, but that only had to do with the way I watched it on that shitty player. But it all comes down to the fact that I really had a nice time watching it, even though there were some imperfections. I really did like most of it. Oh, and I have another Herzog film here actually that I have shown before, but I had never seen it. This is not a Region 1 DVD, so I could have seen this one, but I just didn't look that good. Queen of the Desert. It isn't that good, but it's got some interesting stuff in it. Nicole Kidman is very good. She gives a good performance. James Franco. I'm not sure why James Franco is in this. He did his role, I guess, but you know, it was not the best. Let's see, what's his name? Damian Lewis. Yeah, kind of forgettable character. He played it maybe the way you would expect it. The most interesting out of the supporting cast, I thought, was maybe Robert Pattinson, who didn't get enough scenes. But I didn't actually know about the story of Gertrude Bell before watching this, so you know, that's always nice to learn something watching a film. But I still want it to be more than that. You know, I don't want to learn. I don't want to watch an educational film that's just educational. In all honesty, I'm not interested. Maybe if it's a documentary about something, that's interesting. But a live action film that's only telling the story about something historical and that's it, like, no thanks. But there were some interesting. I mean, I did watch it just because of the fact that Herzog made it. And I would never have. I don't think I would have ever watched this if it wasn't for that. If it wasn't for the fact that he was behind the camera. But there were some Herzogianisms, some you know, recognizable things that he does sometimes with his camera that stood out to me. But for the most part, it's very kind of forgettable. Anyone could have directed. There's some very nice nature shots and so on. But I think those shots add up to maybe 10 minutes. Maybe, yeah, something like that, maybe. So most of it is a bit bland, to be honest. The next one here is called Cherry Baby with Maggie Gyllenhaal. Danny Trejo is in this as well. This was a story about Maggie Gyllenhaal. She plays, I don't know, mid-20s maybe, woman who is recently released, or she's just been released from prison, in which she has spent time for drug possession and stealing to be able to afford drugs. So she gets out, you know, obviously as anyone would, trying to not go back to the, you know, the heroin. And it's following her as she's trying to successfully do that, as well as what's the word, reuniting with her daughter, who is 5 maybe. So she hasn't known her daughter for most of her life. But when she sees her daughter, who is at her brother's house and his wife, so they've essentially raised her, so they're kind of her parents, in a sense. And the wife is very kind of upset with Sherry for her name was Sherry, right? Yeah. Okay. For putting her in this position of, we raised her for you, and now you want her back. Well, we love her. It's that kind of situation. And when she meets her daughter I don't know how long it had been before that, since they met, but her daughter recognizes her as her mother. So maybe she hadn't been in prison for that long. Well, anyway, so it follows her with these different things, explores her psychological state as well, of course, and it's one of those drama films that they're kind of predictable, but it's a kind of drama film that I usually really get a lot out of, and this was no exception. I really liked it. I would recommend it if you can find it. What else? Yeah, that's about it, I think. This actually is one that I rewatched recently. No, I didn't. Maybe I didn't talk about that. I was gonna say that. I'm not sure if I didn't. Obviously, I said in the beginning of the video that I was looking forward to getting to the point where I have seen everything in my collection. Partly so that I can actually, when I do buy something, I can watch that and I can spend time watching those Blu-rays. They're not gonna fall back in a backlog of or a pile somewhere, whatever. But also so that I can rewatch more movies, which has been something that I've been wanting to do for so many years, and nothing is stopping me. It's just that when I have so many choices of films that I have never seen before right in front of my face, I just prefer something new over something that I've seen before. But I just, the mood struck me for whatever reason to go and get this off the shelf. So I have rewatched this recently. It's a film called Double Dare, and maybe you can recognize Zoe Bell on the cover. Is her name on the cover? Yeah, it is. So Zoe Bell and Jeannie Epper, they are two stunt women in very different parts of their career. Jeannie Epper, she was known as being the stunt woman for Wonder Woman in, I don't know actually if this was in the 70s or 80s or how long the show kept going for. Of course, Zoe Bell is known for having worked with Tarantino, but in the film she meets him for the first time. So when the film starts, she's known as the stunt woman for Cena, for Lucy Lawless. And you can see that on the cover, of course. But they're in very different parts of their career, because Zoe Bell, while she has been the stunt woman for Lucy Lawless successfully for a while, she's still in a very early part of her career. I don't know how old she would have been at this time, but early to mid-20s, I'm guessing. So she's just getting started. She hasn't met Tarantino yet. There's a couple interesting scenes when she does. Whereas Jeannie Epper, she's sort of struggling to stay in the business, because she is, in the film, she's about 60, I think, and she still wants to do it, but it's hard to find work as a stunt woman in your 50s or 60s. So, but they meet and they come together, and it's just a really fun film. And I remember loving this when I saw it the first time a number of years ago, and I had fun with this the second time. I don't know it's not necessarily one of those films, like there are many films that I have that I've seen that I feel deserve a revisit because they're complex and they're hard to take in and so on. This is just the complete opposite. It's just fun, comfy, and sometimes those are the things that I tend to rewatch the most. If I do rewatch something, those tend to be the ones that I go back to. Even then, though, it's not that often. But anyway, I don't know if this DVD is well, it's out of print, but it's I don't know how difficult it is to get. I actually don't know. This has a commentary as well, in which they drink champagne and they run out too fast. Anyway, I think I'm gonna stop at that. Actually, no, one more, just because. So it's a little bit related to what I was talking about before with the Region 1 player. I said about the Green Ant stream that I could finally watch it after having had it for all these years. This one I've had for a couple years, and I just took it for granted that it was Region 1. But I decided to check, and what do you know, it's not. So before receiving the DVD player, I watched this. I don't know, I just assumed when I bought it, I think it said like Region 1 import, like warning, this is not going to play in UK players, whatever, when I bought it from UK Amazon. And so sometimes that's inaccurate, but I forget to check sometimes. Of course, in this instance, it was inaccurate because it's region free. There's no information about the region on the back. Usually that's a sign that it's region free. Anyway, Real Paradise. I've been wanting to see this for years. The only real thing that I've heard about this, other than knowing what the plot is that the main character was supposed to be very unlikable. And he kind of is, but I don't think it's entirely justified to criticize him for it, but to some extent, absolutely. But yeah, John Pearson, yeah, he moved with his family for a year in this remote island in Fiji, and he set up a cinema, and he showed movies for free because he wanted to. He was a movie buff. He had worked with film for a number of years, and it follows them over this year. Actually, not over the entire year, because it turned out that they talk about it in the commentary with director Steve James and Pearson's wife, whose name I didn't remember his name either, but I don't remember hers. Janet Pearson, yeah, commentary with Steve James and Janet Pearson. She was so great in the commentary. She was like just holding no punches back. That's the wrong way of putting it. But she was like completely honest about things that she didn't feel worked. She was like, I think you could have done this differently. This goes on for so long. I don't really like this bit. I don't like why you did it. I don't like how you did this. And Steve James kind of says, okay, yeah, I get it. I kind of like it though. Anyways, it's a fun commentary for that reason as well. But obviously, with films like these, it's often interesting to listen to the commentary because they tend to be fairly candid or interesting or unusual in some way, because it's a pretty small film. Steve James, by the way, the director of Hoop Dreams, might be his most well-known film. I'm just rambling on. I was going to say that in the commentary they mentioned the fact that he was only there for like a couple months before they left. Anyway, but yeah, John Pearson, he's a man with a very strong will, and sometimes maybe oversteps his boundaries, or at least some of the people maybe in Fiji thought so. So he clashes a little bit with some people, but he does his thing. He does what he wants to do, and I had really a lot of fun with it. I'm glad that I was able to watch it after having after having wanted to see it for so many years. What else was I gonna say? I think that's it. But Steve James, I have bought another couple of documentaries. I bought a film called Stevie, which I was so looking forward to, and I just can't let it go because it seems like it's lost. Like, hopefully it's just temporarily lost in transit because of COVID or whatever. But I don't know, man. It seems like it's lost. I hope that it's gonna arrive at some point. It should have arrived like a couple of weeks ago at least. So I don't bet on it. I don't count on it arriving. But if it does, then I'm looking forward to seeing it. I was so looking forward to it. Like, every day I was thinking, if I had Stevie on DVD today, that's what I would watch. Anyway, so I'm actually kind of bummed out about that, because it seems, well, I can get it from somewhere else, but you know, then I have to wait even longer, and it might be lost again. I don't know. I don't think there's a huge chance of it being lost the second time. But anyway, Stevie, I bought it. I don't know. I'll hopefully can watch it at some point. The Interrupters I also bought, which should be arriving. If it hasn't arrived today, because I haven't checked my mailbox today, I'm guessing it's gonna arrive next week, early on next week. So the Interrupters, I think I saw some of it years ago, but I turned it off for some reason. I have no idea. But yeah, so I have that on the way as well, and I have brought out my Criterion DVD of Hoop Dreams, so I'm planning on rewatching that. Although I'm not crazy about having to listen to the humming sound for 3 hours watching Hoop Dreams, but I'm gonna put up with it and buy a better player at some point eventually. That's it. I think I need to leave now. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. That's it. Bye bye.